The 1980s gave us some of cinema's most controversial films. Movies so shocking they faced X ratings, distribution bans, and outright censorship. These battles turned art films into underground legends and sparked debates about violence, sexuality, and artistic freedom that still rage today. Blue Velvet drops you into the manicured lawns of Lumberton, where college student Jeffrey Beaumont discovers a severed human ear in a field, launching an investigation that pulls him into the sadomasochistic underworld controlled by Frank Booth, a psychotic criminal who's sexually enslaving lounge singer Dorothy Valens by holding her family hostage, forcing Jeffrey to hide in her closet and witness Frank's violent rituals while becoming dangerously entangled in Dorothy's desperate world. Lynch stripped away suburban innocence to expose the rot festering beneath, using sexual violence, not as exploitation, but as a scalpel to examine how darkness lives inside normalcy, how voyeurism corrupts the observer, and evil doesn't announce itself with horror movie aesthetics, but hides behind white picket fences. Isabella Rossellini endured genuine psychological brutality during filming, walking around naked in public locations, while locals arrived with literal picnic baskets to watch like it was a community theater production, forcing Wilmington authorities to shut down certain streets after realizing what was actually being filmed in their wholesome neighborhoods. Dennis Hopper threw himself into Frank Booth with terrifying commitment after years of career wilderness, begging Lynch for the role by insisting he was Frank, even convincing the director to swap Frank's drug from helium to ammonitrite because, and this is a direct quote, "A man like that would use something real from the club scene, not a party balloon." Lynch carved away entire subplots from a rough cut running close to 4 hours, trimming sequences to satisfy censors particularly concerned about sexualized violence. In one rape scene, the camera originally lingered on Frank actually striking Dorothy, but Lynch cut to Jeffrey's horrified reaction instead, both appeasing objections and paradoxically making the moment more unsettling by forcing audiences to imagine what they couldn't see. The film arrived as a genuine shock, critics split between calling it a masterwork and condemning it as sadism masquerading as art, ultimately becoming the film that proved disturbing art could force necessary conversations about voyeurism and complicity that polite cinema refused to touch, which naturally made institutions even more uncomfortable. Crimes of Passion unfolds in neon-soaked Los Angeles, where Joanna Crane lives two lives. By day, a talented fashion designer moving through conference rooms with quiet professionalism. By night, transforming into China Blue, a platinum blonde sex worker who roams seedy streets in a shimmering blue dress, offering fantasies to lonely men in cheap hotel rooms. Bobby Grady, a burned-out salesman hired to follow Joanna for suspected corporate espionage, instead discovers China Blue and becomes drawn into her nocturnal world, while Reverend Peter Shane, a deranged street preacher with a briefcase full of dildos and crucifixes, stalks China Blue preaching salvation while clearly teetering on his own psychotic edge. Ken Russell crafted this as a deliberate middle finger to American Puritanism, using explicit sexuality and religious imagery to explore how society's sexual repression breeds violence, turning what could have been a trashy thriller into a philosophical examination of how shame and desire destroy people when forced underground. Kathleen Turner took the role specifically to shatter her romancing the stone image, spending long nights under harsh neon lighting in cramped hotel rooms, performing stylized bedroom encounters, where she shifted accents and personas from one client to the next, like twisted one-act plays, enduring hours in revealing costumes that required her to portray both China Blue's detached professionalism and Joanna's hidden vulnerability. Anthony Perkins leaned into his Norman Bates shadow rather than running from it, creating a character who preached morality while hiding in porn theaters, clutching fetish objects, delivering lines as if they were both sermon and confession, while working closely with Russell to push the performance into stylized extremes that made audiences genuinely unsure whether they were watching satire or something more disturbing. New World Pictures faced an apocalyptic ratings battle when the MPAA slapped the film with an X rating, forcing Russell to cut over 20 minutes, including explicit sequences and religious imagery deemed too offensive, sparking national debates that positioned Crimes of Passion as a flashpoint in culture wars, revealing how institutions feared Frank's sexuality far more than graphic violence, which apparently got a pass. 9.5 Weeks centers on Elizabeth McGraw, a shy Manhattan art gallery assistant whose meticulously ordered world turns upside down after a chance encounter with John Gray, a mysterious Wall Street financier, whose romantic pursuit quickly evolves into an all-consuming affair defined by blindfolds, ice cubes, and power games that push her into ever more daring emotional and physical experiences over, you guessed it, 9.5 weeks. Director Adrian Lyne and Mickey Rourke intentionally kept Kim emotionally unsteady throughout production. She was left isolated from cast and crew to heighten her vulnerability and wasn't informed in advance about the full nature of certain scenes, leading to authentic, raw reactions on camera that were less acting and more genuine confusion and distress. Kim later revealed the constant manipulation led her to tears on multiple occasions, with the blurred line between fiction and reality, leaving lasting effects that required significant time to shake off. Struggling with emotional residue the role left behind, while the film's defenders insisted this was all necessary for authenticity. Real-life tension simmered between Kim and Rourke, despite their magnetic on-screen chemistry. Kim felt uncomfortable with Rourke's improvisational style and unpredictable energy, admitting years later she felt intimidated by him. While the pair had minimal interaction offset, a calculated distance line encouraged to fuel the power imbalance, because apparently treating your actors well would have ruined the vibe. The MPAA demanded severe edits for an R rating, with numerous explicit scenes removed. Yet even with cuts, the movie was banned or heavily censored in several countries. The UK slapped it with an X rating and refused theatrical release for years, while critics and parents groups labeled it dangerous and corrupting. The film sparked widespread moral panic that significantly damaged its US commercial prospects, while paradoxically helping it achieve cult status in Europe, revealing the double standard where American institutions feared sexual exploration between consenting adults far more than they feared graphic violence, a hypocrisy the controversy made impossible to ignore. The accused follows working-class Sarah Tobias, who's violently gang-raped by several men in a local bar while bystanders watch and cheer. Then we watch attorney Catherine Murphy fight to prosecute not just the rapist but the onlookers who encouraged the assault, exposing how the legal system and society blame victims while protecting perpetrators through institutional apathy. Jonathan Kaplan structured this as unflinching courtroom drama that refused to sanitize sexual violence, using the rape scene not as exploitation but as evidence demanding audiences witness what Sarah endured, forcing viewers to confront their own complicity in rape culture rather than letting them look away comfortably. Jodie Foster transformed herself for Sarah Tobias in ways that left her psychologically shattered, with the rape sequence filming devastating both physically and emotionally, requiring her to remain isolated on set to process trauma while staying in a permanent state of anxiety that triggered nightmares throughout and after shooting. Foster drew on personal fears and vulnerabilities for what she called the most difficult performance of her life, earning her the Academy Award for Best Actress, but also leaving her temporarily questioning whether she wanted to continue in Hollywood after the emotional toll, describing herself as changed forever by inhabiting Sarah's trauma. Kelly McGillis revealed the filming environment was so intense that several crew members walked off set in distress, and despite rehearsals, closed sets, and therapeutic support, many involved reported nightmares and severe emotional reactions to the brutal realism of what they were capturing. The film ignited national conversation about rape culture upon release, with politicians and advocacy groups using it as lightning rod for debates about misogyny and consent, while some jurisdictions called to ban it entirely. Critics divided between praising its honesty and condemning it as exploitative, ultimately forcing cultural reckoning with how society treats survivors, even as the controversy revealed how uncomfortable institutions became when forced to witness rather than politely ignore what sexual violence actually looks like. Angel Heart follows grizzled private detective Harry Angel, hired by the ominously named Louis Cypher, subtle right to locate missing crooner Johnny Favorite, spiraling from 1950s New York jazz clubs into New Orleans voodoo swamps through hallucinatory nightmares and grisly murders that culminate in shocking revelations about Harry's own identity. Alan Parker crafted this as Descent into Hell disguised as detective story, using religious imagery and voodoo rituals to explore how people run from their sins, only to discover escape is impossible, turning noir conventions inside out to create existential horror about confronting the darkness you've been fleeing your entire life. Mickey Rourke fully immersed himself in Harry Angel by refusing to break character even when cameras stopped, staying in his shabby detective costume between takes and wandering New York streets to absorb real ambiance, his commitment unnerving the crew as he insisted on actual physical discomfort and weather-beaten locations while performing his own minor stunts. The emotional toll was steep, and after filming particularly brutal scenes, Rourke isolated himself for hours, rarely socializing with castmates, later describing lingering anxieties and nightmares that stemmed from the role, while noting Angel Heart fundamentally changed how he approached acting, favoring emotional rawness over technical precision in ways that would define his career. Lisa Bonet's casting as Epiphany Proudfoot blindsided audiences who knew her only as wholesome Denise Huxtable, and tabloids erupted when trailers dropped, painting her participation as betrayal to the Cosby brand, while Bill Cosby himself privately counseled her on NBC, responded by writing her out of storylines, effectively punishing her career ambitions at the exact moment she was trying to prove her range. Parker fought relentless MPAA battles after they slapped the film with an X rating over 10 seconds of graphic sexual content between Rourke and Bonet, and even the censored version drew outrage from religious groups condemning voodoo imagery as satanic, igniting debates about celebrity image and artistic freedom that revealed how violently institutions reacted when wholesome stars dared shatter their manufactured personas. Twilight Zone the movie revives Rod Serling's iconic series through 4 distinct segments helmed by different Hollywood directors, taking audiences from 1940s American South haunted by bigotry to magical worlds where age reverses to demented suburban homes ruled by children's minds, binding stories together through themes of fate and chance in the unknown. The anthology format promised nostalgic celebration, using A-list directors and modern effects to update classic stories for a new generation. But what should have been joyful tribute became Hollywood's most infamous tragedy when real-world horror eclipsed anything the fiction could imagine. During John Landis's segment filming a racist man transported into wartime horrors, a botched helicopter stunt led to the deaths of actor Vic Morrow and 2 child actors when the helicopter flying dangerously low amidst pyrotechnic effects spun out of control and plummeted, killing all 3 instantly in an accident captured on multiple cameras. Investigations uncovered the children were working illegally in violation of child labor laws without proper clearance for the dangerous night shoot, resulting in criminal charges for Landis and crew members, who were eventually acquitted. But the disaster fundamentally changed Hollywood's approach to on-set safety, while becoming an indelible stain nobody involved could ever wash off. Kathleen Quinlan, who befriended the child actors, was reportedly devastated and retreated from public view for months, while some crew members quit the industry entirely after witnessing the consequences, and director George Miller remained traumatized by proximity, insisting on strict safety protocols for all future shoots in ways that revealed how deeply the horror haunted everyone. The film's release sparked outrage as moral watchdogs condemned callous disregard for life in pursuit of spectacle, forcing studios to implement immediate drastic changes to child labor and safety protocols, while the phrase Twilight Zone accident became shorthand invoked whenever film set tragedies occurred, ensuring the deaths would forever overshadow any artistic achievement and serving as permanent reminder that some ambitions cost more than anyone should be willing to pay. The Cook the Thief, his wife and her lover unfolds almost entirely within a lavish London restaurant where sadistic mobster Albert Speaker rules through humiliation and torture, subjecting his wife Georgina to nightly indignities while she finds solace in clandestine affair with gentle patron Michael, building toward an elaborate final feast of retribution involving forced cannibalism that makes Sweeney Todd look subtle. Peter Greenaway crafted this as Baroque middle finger to Thatcher-era greed and cruelty, using grotesque contrast between beauty and bodily horror to explore how civilization's veneer barely conceals the violence underneath, turning the restaurant into theater where power and revenge get served alongside the meals. Helen Mirren spent days agonizing over whether to accept the role, fearing tabloid backlash and critics who might dismiss her performance as sensationalism rather than art. And on set, she confided to makeup artists about her anxiety during the film's most explicit moments, relying on Greenaway's rigorous professionalism to ground herself through the vulnerability. Michael Gambon struggled deeply with accessing Speaker's extreme cruelty, privately confessing to Greenaway that slipping into the grotesque psychology was harder than any Shakespearean villain he'd tackled, and between takes he couldn't shake the character, sometimes snapping at crew members while later admitting the role left him haunted for weeks in ways that genuinely frightened him. The film shattered boundaries, with scenes involving forced cannibalism, graphic torture, nudity, and bodily fluids that prompted widespread censorship, slapped with an X rating in the United States that effectively barred wide theatrical release, while UK regional councils attempted outright bans, with rental chains refusing to stock even censored versions. Upon release, the movie became focal point for moral panic across Europe and America, with religious groups condemning it as sign of declining morality. Yet the ratings battle Mirren championed by flying to personally confront the appeals board ultimately pushed the MPAA to introduce the NC-17 category, meaning the film threatened with oblivion ended up reshaping how cinema handles controversial content for decades to come. Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer follows drifter Henry, just released from prison, whose unsettling calm belies a history of vicious random murders, moving into a dingy Chicago apartment with unstable Otis and his naive sister Becky, where an ominous friendship develops, spiraling deeper into savagery, shot with cold documentary-style realism that makes audiences witness everyday evil. John McNaughton stripped away every horror movie convention to create an examination of remorseless violence, refusing to explain Henry's motivations, provide cathartic justice, or make violence look remotely appealing, forcing viewers to confront how evil operates without pattern or purpose in ways more terrifying than any supernatural monster. Michael Rooker became so immersed in portraying Henry that he spent weeks living alone in isolation, shunning cast gatherings and eating meals apart, moving to a small apartment away from conveniences to adopt Henry's alienation, while refusing to break character even off-set, creeping out other actors with his unwavering silence and distant gaze. Rooker later described the psychological toll through recurring nightmares and bouts of paranoia, worrying the intensity might permanently alter his personality, and he avoided social events for months after filming while his family expressed genuine concern for his well-being, admitting years later the role fundamentally reshaped how he approached acting. The low-budget production relied on real derelict Chicago locations, sometimes filming with actual residents nearby. And one night while shooting in a motel, gunshots rang out blocks away, and production halted as everyone ducked for cover, a sobering echo of the film's theme that left the crew shaken and questioning what they were creating. When presented to the MPAA, the film was refused an R rating due to disturbing unmitigated violence, even after multiple cuts, and the British Board of Film Classification refused it, a certificate for years while the X rating in the United States made distribution nearly impossible, forcing the film into underground circulation, where it gradually emerged as a cult classic that exposed how desperately institutions wanted to suppress the most honest portrayals of evil, precisely because it refused to make violence look fun.